So, how does an institution stick around for almost 1,000 years? I mean, through wars, getting exiled, empires collapsing all around them. How do they do it? Well, the secret is reinvention. And today, we're going to dive into the incredible story of the Knights of Malta, a 900-year epic of constant transformation. And wow, what a transformation it's been. I mean, just look at this. It really puts their whole journey into perspective, right? They started out in the 11th century as, a pretty humble hospital for pilgrims in Jerusalem. And today, they're a massive global humanitarian organization in 120 countries. So the big question is, how do you get from a simple infirmary to a powerful military force, and then back to being humanitarians? That's the story we're about to unfold. Okay, so it all starts with a really simple charitable mission. But here's the thing, they're in a war-torn land. And even just trying to help the sick becomes a huge challenge. You have to ask yourself, how do you protect the very people you're trying to heal? And you can see just how quickly things got serious. Around 1080, you've got this lay brother, Gerard, who organizes a hospital. Simple enough. But then, just a few decades later, in 1113, Pope Pascal II makes them totally independent, a sovereign order, reporting directly to the Pope. But the real game changer? That comes around 1130. A new Grand Master, Raymond Dupuy, looks around and basically decides, hey, healing isn't enough. They need to protect the pilgrims too. And just like that, the warrior monk is born. And this right here perfectly sums up their new dual identity. Their motto became Tuitio Fidei et Obsequium Pauperum, which means defense of the faith and assistance to the poor. So the crucial thing to get is that they never saw this as abandoning their original mission. Not at all. For them, protecting a pilgrim from a bandit's sword was just as much an act of charity as, bandaging his wounds afterwards. It was two sides of the same coin. But their time in the Holy Land, well, it was running out. After the fall of Acre in 1291, they were forced out. And suddenly, they're facing a total identity crisis. I mean, if you can't defend the Holy Land anymore, what's a holy warrior supposed to do? How do you even stay relevant? Well, what did they do? They reinvented themselves, of course. By capturing the island of Rhodes in 1310, they completely changed the game. They went from a land-based army to this fearsome naval power. They basically became the sea lords of the Mediterranean, a fortified Christian bulwark holding the line against the rising Ottoman Empire. Their new mission was crystal clear: control the seas. But that kind of defiance, it comes at a price. By 1522, Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent had just had enough. And just look at these numbers. They're absolutely staggering. He sends an army of over 100,000 soldiers to crush a defending force of just 7,000. And for 6 brutal months, the knights somehow held out against these impossible odds. They fought so fiercely that even when they lost, they earned the deep respect of their enemy. When they finally surrendered, Sultan Suleiman himself said this: "It is not without some regret that I forced this brave old man from his home." So yeah, they were defeated, but their honor was totally intact. And the knights were homeless once again. So after years of wandering, they're finally given a new home in 1530, the barren, dusty rock of Malta. And get this, it was in exchange for an annual tribute of a single Maltese falcon. But their old enemy, the Ottomans, they would follow them. And this sets the stage for one of the most legendary sieges in all of history. So let's look at the odds for what became known as the Great Siege of 1565. The Ottomans show up with over 40,000 elite soldiers, including their best janissaries. And the defenders, led by a 70-year-old grandmaster named Jean de Valette, they had maybe 8,000 men in total. It was David versus Goliath all over again, but on a massive scale. And what followed was a 4-month ordeal of just unbelievable brutality. First, the Ottomans threw everything they had at this tiny little fort, Fort St. Elmo. It was basically a suicide mission for the guys inside, but they held out for 31 days. That bought precious time, and critically, it cost the Ottomans their best commander, Drogat. Then came a 2-month onslaught on the main strongholds, Burgu and Singlia. One of the most intense bombardments in history. When the walls were finally breached, the 70-year-old de Valette, he personally leads a desperate countercharge into the breach. It was this absolute, stubborn refusal to break that, against all odds, led to victory. A completely demoralized Ottoman army finally just gave up and retreated. This victory, it was a massive turning point. It absolutely shattered the myth of Ottoman invincibility in the Mediterranean. And de Valette's epitaph really sums it up perfectly. He was the scourge of Africa and Asia and the shield of Europe.
This was the absolute peak of their military glory, no question. But what happens next? How do you stay relevant when your great enemy isn't really a threat anymore? Centuries after their greatest victory, the knights faced a brand new kind of challenge, being stripped of their land and with it, their entire purpose.
Yeah, and this timeline, it just shows how dramatic that fall really was. In 1565, they're the celebrated heroes of Christendom, defeating a massive empire. Then, fast forward just over 200 years to 1798, they surrender Malta to Napoleon Bonaparte without firing a single shot. Their military purpose had just kind of withered away.
So, homeless again, they find a new base in Rome in 1834. And this is where the story truly comes full circle. They shed their military role completely. They went back to their roots, focusing entirely on the humanitarian and medical work that started it all, way back in that little hospital in Jerusalem.
And that brings us to the massive organization they are today. I mean, just take a look at these numbers. Their growth has been incredible. From that one small hospital, they now have over 13,000 members, 80,000 volunteers, and they're working in 120 different countries. Their reach is truly global now. So, what does that work actually look like today? Well, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta runs hospitals and medical centers. They provide disaster relief for natural catastrophes. They aid refugees and people who've been displaced. They even maintain full diplomatic relations with over 100 countries. It's basically their original mission, just scaled up for the 21st century. And that brings us to our final question, doesn't it? From Crusader Knights to global medics, what does this 900-year story of survival really teach us about the power of reinvention? Maybe, just maybe, it's that the ultimate strength isn't found in stone walls or sharp swords, but in the ability, the power, to completely reinvent your purpose,